When we use motion tweening to animate the position of an object on the stage, by default, Flash creates this animation in a straight line. In the case of my example animation, the box moves down and to the right. But what happens when we want the box to follow an irregular path, say a curve? For this, we need to use motion guides, and that's what we're going to be covering in this lesson. A motion guide controls the movement of all the objects on layers assigned to that motion guide. And to set up a motion guide, we need a guide layer and an object inside that guide layer that becomes the guide itself. To create the layer, we have three methods. First, select the layer you'd like to be guided and click the Add Motion Guide button here. Second, right-click on the layer and choose Add Motion Guide. Finally, choose Insert, Timeline, and Motion Guide here. Once we do this, a new layer appears. The label on it tells us it's a guide, and it also tells us that it is going to be guiding the contents of layer 1. Now we have the layer, we need to put the guide in it. You can use any of Flash's drawing tools here, but for this lesson I'm going to use the line tool. Click and drag to create a line. Now we need to snap the box to the start point and end point of the line. Select the box, I'm using the selection tool here, and make sure that snapping is turned on. Choose View, Snapping, and Snap to Objects. That'll make sure that we position this box properly. You should see a registration point inside the box, either in the center or in the upper left-hand corner. Drag the box by this point, and it should snap to the end of the line. Do the same thing at the end of the animation. And now the box should follow the line. This is only a straight line though, so let's make it a curve. Again, using the selection tool, click and drag the center of the line to make it a curve. Now the box follows the curve. Keep in mind that this line we've just drawn is not rendered at runtime. That is, you're not going to see it in the final exported movie. If you want to, you can turn off the visibility here in the timeline by clicking the little dot underneath the eye icon, but it's still there. Now let's have a look at some of the options we have down in the Properties Inspector. To set these, you'll need to select the first keyframe in the guided layer. Look down at the bottom, and our first option is Rotate. You can set this to None or Automatic, clockwise or counterclockwise. If you choose the last two, you'll have an option to tell Flash how many times you'd like this to rotate. I'll choose 5 rotations in a clockwise direction, and we can see it here. We also have an Orient to Path setting. Notice here that the box stays upright, even though it goes around a curve. Imagine an animation where a racing car is driving down a road that curves. The car is not going to stay in a straight line. It's going to rotate according to the direction it's moving in. And this is where we can make the box do that. Select the frame again, choose Orient to Path, and its rotation is now automatically controlled by the path. Finally, we have a snap setting here. This can make it easier to set up these guided tweens. With that turned on, we can drag this box out anywhere we like, and as soon as we let go, it's automatically snapped to the line. So remember, if you're ever trying to move a box or an object around, and it keeps jumping back to something, have a look at this setting here. Okay, so we've set up a motion guide and had a look at some of the options for it. We're going to spend the rest of this lesson having a look at how you can control which layers are guided and which ones aren't. To remove a guide completely, select the layer, right-click it, and untick Guide. You can turn it back on by doing the same thing, but because the guided layer has been told that it's not guided anymore, you'll also need to right-click on that and choose Properties and change it to Guided. Now it's guided again. In a similar fashion, if you want to leave the guide there but change the layer to not be guided anymore, just go to Properties, change it to Normal. Or you can grab the layer and drag it above the guide layer. This automatically unguides it. Drag it back below the guide and it's guided again. If we create a new layer and we have this guided layer already selected, the new layer by default will also be guided. This way you can use a single guide to control multiple objects. Say one object going from left to right, another object going from right to left, and so on. And that wraps up our lesson on motion guides.